Shall I start, or
start us off, Nelson.
All right. I guess there's nothing much to say, but we're here with Pilita.
Hello.
He's an advocate for Asian Aryanism, and we just simply wanted to discuss his worldview and how he's come to the conclusion he has. So I just want to start out by asking Pilita, exactly what is Asian Aryanism?
Thanks for having me on, Lord Nelson and Snookers too.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's funny that you have interest in something I'm calling Asian Aryanism on my YouTube channel and on Twitter, and I assume to have a www.asianaryanism.com website very shortly. That will just be a Tumblr page redirecting to all my sources there. So about myself, I kind of in an area which would be a very white male Asian female, and even to some extent Asian male white female area of America. And it's mostly in every major city, and this is kind of a class of normie to, you might even call beta, even cuck kind of kids that just they range from hipsters to like interested in eccentric behavior. They go to their expensive private liberal colleges, and they overwhelmingly all have Asian girlfriends. And so often it will be called they're Asian Americans, and that just means someone who's half white or half Chinese, Japanese. But that's not really a justifying term. It sounds like a term Ted Cruz would make up. I've been having these friends and been trying to bring up the race issue with them, but they completely ignore it, and the normie white people thing is basically, race doesn't matter, everyone is universal, you don't think in those terms, and I only love her is because...
Hyper-individualism, yes.
Yeah, and it's this ideal where they love her, and she's just so happens to be Asian, when the truth of the matter is they're discriminating, and they're choosing these girls over what they should be white girls, and you have to ask why they're doing that. And I think probably it has something to do with bitchy white feminist girls, and the how white girls have lost so much value. So like the integral white men that should be after their own kind are rather duping them in favor of broken English or Asian American or just Chinese girls in general. And so I've been associated with the alt-right, and I've been on reading Countercurrent since I'm 17. I'm still pretty young. I'm in my early 20s. I just graduated college. And I've been to several white nationalist events. And I've kind of brought up this Asian question to some friends. And they kind of understand where I'm coming from. I mean, especially the joke is John Derbyshire has an Asian wife. And Robert Weisberg, they're a part of the... H.L. Mencken Club, and there's that whole, even Jared Taylor speaking fluent Japanese. And so there's this interesting thing about how a lot of white males in the multicultural game are, especially in their youth and their younger years, are getting Asian girlfriends. It's a very overwhelming number. So I don't really advocate racial mixing, and I keep saying this really importantly is because that might sound like, I'm some kind of, you might even call me a degenerate or a Jew or some kind of conniving creature that's, but no, I'm not supporting racial mixing. What I'm saying is it has already happened because of the Gen X generation and now millennials, and because there's this scene in every major liberal city of white male Asian females that they have their own scene, right? And if we're supposed to red pill the whole nation, we're going to have to red pill these wamafel couples, what I'd like to call them. And if they're going to be red pill, you're going to have to give them Asian Aryanism, which basically is, I call it an alt-right Asian American alt-right HAPA white advocacy for like it's like you have an Asian girlfriend, yet you associate with the whole white nationalist culture, and you just don't care. Or you're maybe this half a mix, half a person, and you just, you're alt right too. It sounds like it's a really an alt light position, I would say.
Would you describe them as because of their mixing, their obvious high IQ and the sort of traits that you usually find within Europeans, they're more inclined to be allies than any other group or, I don't know, mixing combination or something like that. And your ideology is specifically tailored to get these kind of people on our side.
Yeah, I mean, one of the joke is Elliot Rodgers seems to be the worst example, and obviously you might hear this. It's obviously he's going to shoot up the school. I mean, I'm not going to lie myself. I've had revenge fantasies, and I like really weird, crazy stuff. I mean, I always say this. My favorite band is KMFDM. I love them so much. But, it's a typical school shooter band, and like, it seems to me that there's this weird Yukio Mishima revenge fantasy thing about HAPA people, or just Asian males in general. And on the Reddit, like the HAPA Reddit, they assume that... Yeah. Okay, a digression here. The HAPA Reddit is basically a huge Reddit by this guy, Eurasian writer, or stuff Eurasian people like. And his whole argument is that if you belong to if you're the son of a white male Asian female, the offspring of that, or even in reverse, chances are your life is miserable, you suck, and you should just die. And it's this really strange nihilistic thing. Ironically, though, it's supported by these like social justice warrior, cultural Marxist, PC normie like HAPAs, and they think it's okay to be the victim card. While at the same time, it's really just advocating the alt-right. It's assuming don't race mix, and it's funny.
It's good evidence. Like people bring up the r/HAPA boards and like how HAPA males are less successful than white males in like dating they have statistics on dating sites, and along with how the English colonies versus the Spanish colonies in the New World ended up. That's one of the primary anti-race mixing arguments that people use.
I mean,
I would say, additionally, I'd like to point out that the obvious embracement of the victimhood narrative and especially the anti-white narrative is exactly what the leftists want. How do you exactly rectify that? As in, how is not actively discouraging this sort of thing? Well, not playing into the left's hands.
I was a huge lurker of the HAPA Reddit, even when I was 18, 19, and still in high school and at almost the beginning of college. I would go on the HAPA Reddit and relate to totally a lot of the things that they were saying. However, it seems to me that the whole message is just, if you're Eurasian, just you go die, or you're a loser. But the only way that should be good is you play victim, you hate the white person, and then you just... It's stupid, really. Their only enemies are Tila Tequila and Margaret Cho. Those are their big enemies, and it's so stupid. So in a way, I made up Asian Aryanism as, all right, you want a boogeyman, I'll give you a boogeyman, and I'll be your new enemy. It seems to me that the HAPA board is scared of the coming rise of what would be called Asian Aryanism. They're scared that more Asians want to be associating on the white side. And there's true evidence that the Chinese, too. The Chinese have this... thing. I can't pronounce the Chinese word for it, but I was researching it. But it's this ideal that they don't frown upon race mixing in China unless it benefits Chinese society or the Asianication of something. So they'll send out their Chinese women to like white men, or even to some extent, and the Japanese done this in Brazil and some of the Ethiopian in Ethiopia, in Africa, and they'll just send them out there and just... There's a Chinese there, there's a Chinese here, and now sooner or later there's Chinese in every country. So as long as they can tame white people, make them in this wax museum, and make them more on the Chinese side, well, China has its great empire in the center of the...
Would you say this is similar to the Jewish evolutionary strategy and matriarchal?
I think so. It sounds
Okay.
very similar. I mean, I remember reading Kevin McDonald's book too at in college, just picking it up and looking through it, and the it's different though, because Jews would be more, they had a different interesting background, and they're definitely more knitted into different racial backgrounds, and they have more of this religious thing. While the Chinese, they live outside the Western experience, and they're more, the center is around them. They could care less. They could care less what white people or black people think. The Chinese, all they care about is if China still exists in the next few years. So when people make the argument and say China's going to rule the world, not exactly. They're just going to put everything on a wax museum display and have make China strive, and everybody else will be at the will of their government. That's what would happen
to be
if
rich,
China...
to be glorious.
Exactly. So there's going to be no Western civilization if China wins. It's just going to be China and everybody slave to China, if there ever was Chinese. I mean, Richard Lynn, in his speech on American Renaissance, I think in 2011, said, if I was to pass the torch to some great civilization, it would be China, because it's looking pretty dark and grim with the whole anti-white narrative and white genocide going on right now.
Yeah.
But back on the Hapa Reddit thing, thinking about how it's definitely clear that Asians are the model minority, quote unquote, in the American, especially during the age of Ronald Reagan, and when after the Hart and Celler Act, when they were trying to make the America more white, it seems to me that as they were giving blacks, African Americans, free rights to be like American citizens or whites, it seems that the whole multicultural narrative was justified by saying that the Chinese, especially the Japanese, were like whites, and that they could be, and therefore blacks could strive the same thing and make this weird Black Panther African, we build the pyramid city.
Yeah, they sort of wedged it open in that they were like, look, anyone can do this. Sort of they played the example.
Now I think I think the problem though is that what has happened is in the 80s, when the whole Reagan era, they were promoting how multiculturalism is good, and you had these whole quote-unquote postmodern studies and Derrida and the end of Foucault. You had this strange fascination in academia that supposedly the new whites should be open to different cultures and put them here and there, and everything is I am you and you are me. William Gibson's Neuromancer was huge in the 80s, not because it was just not only that it was a science fiction pulp with an interesting take, but the elites treated it as our dystopian future, which it's a dystopian novel and not something good to look at. The future shouldn't...
something to aim for.
Exactly. Yeah. And some people fetishize over that, and I think it's terrible. I would recommend, however, Gibson's book, Idoru. That was a different world outside of Neuromancer, but instead Japan, the Japanese, rules everyone, assuming that Asia would be the new Western civilization, and white girls, he even says this in the first chapter, they'll get pink, blue hair, anime, manga eyes, and have slim bodies. Gibson literally said this in Idoru, that basically whites would turn into anime characters and anime would be real.
Now, is Gibson white or is he Japanese?
No, he's white. He's just a normal white American who just likes science fiction and beatnik and new wave and just made his own cyberpunk genre, basically. And there was this huge fascination with him in the 80s and 90s because he basically pushed the whole multicultural narrative. In fact, I would even say he predicted the alt-right. In his book, his short story Johnny Mnemonic, he talks about an Aryan reggae band that does it to shock people with alt-right Hitler themes, and somehow this Nazi image will never go away. And that's kind of coming true. Exactly. That's funny about Gibson, but at the same time, there's a lot of... I do think his flaw is that, there's still this fetishization. There was this ideal that Japan would rule over society, but it's not like that at all. I just said it's like the wax museum thing. And so, what has happened really? There was another book I really like. It was actually Jared Taylor's first book, Shadow of the Rising Sun. In that very same book, Jared Taylor, I think he was going to become an Asian studies major and released more books on Japan, but he only had this one book, Shadow of the Rising Sun. The introduction was done by Edward Siedensticker, who translated some of Kawabata's work like Snow Country. And the book was also advocated by Donald Keene and Jack Seward, who are well-known Japanese academics. By the way, Donald Keene is still alive. He's like 92 or 3, and he changed his citizenship from white American to Japanese. But maybe you would say he's Asian Aryan. But in Jared Taylor's book, Shadow of the Rising Sun, he basically argues saying, hey, white Americans are white Americans. You shouldn't fall for the liberal fallacies that somehow we're going to assimilate with the Japanese. In fact, the Japanese are the most racially realist people ever, and they will constantly discriminate, have their own borders. Here's here, there's there. And he basically says it over and over again. Whites are gullible to ever assume we'll become Japanese. And if you want a book that's anti-Asian Aryan, I would recommend and advocate reading Jared Taylor's very first book, Shadow of the Rising Sun. But
focusing less on the sort of academic side of things, right? On the more sort of practical or rather strategic side of things. I want to focus more on this whole Asian Aryanism thing. So,
well, for example, it's a very niche sort of thing. White people who are amenable to white nationalist ideas that want to date Asian girls are already dating. That's super niche, and most of the people that do race mix like that are on the left-wing side of things. I mean, how do you like I said earlier, you might end up with 20 people on a compound. You'll have your ethno-acre.
I'm not going to lie. I was a part of the party of socialism and liberation, and that was kind of this cultural left-wing thing that happens on campus. I was one of the only few of 20 students out of this huge 20,000 student university that had interest in socialism. And I will tell you, 5 of them were like Hispanic or Spanish for obvious reasons, because socialism works in their countries. But some of them were Southeast Asian women, and they had their white boyfriends, actually, which I thought was really funny. But I was only into that because they were nice, like Christians, right? I really like Christianity. I find Christianity
socialist.
They're like Christians. Yes, because here's when I met them, they were giving out free food, and they didn't say they were socialist, and they said, "How's your day going? Is everything cool?" And then they play not frisbee, but they hit the knapsack or the ball with their legs or something, and then they sit down. Happy sack. I can never. They play that, and then all of a sudden, like, this handsome guy comes and talks to you, and then he starts saying, well, you know, we have so much oppression in society and everything's going so bad. Have you ever considered socialism as a... And then all of a sudden the indoctrination begins, and then they say, well, every week and Tuesday at the Starbucks coffee house, we have in-house socialist meetings of how we get across oppression and how all lives matter. And it's interesting because it's not necessarily Black Lives Matter or some PC wrapped up social justice warrior thing. This is like authentic Verso books, Noam Chomsky-esque socialism, which is interesting. Right. But at the same time, it's so small, and it's like a religion in itself. And so... Well,
it's been sort of co-opted by the social justice-y identity politics left. Like, if you look at any of the left-wing websites, they've gone from focusing on more economic issues to almost single-minded racial oppression focus.
Well, I can explain. I mean, when you tie together a whole heap of disparate races together behind something, and they're all non-white, you're going to end up with their sort of aligning factor being anti-white, or their ethnocentrism asserts itself or reasserts itself over the top of the ideals of socialism or whatever they stand for.
They think they can convert those Trigglypuffs and basically white girls who just found out about feminism and indoctrinate them onto socialism. But it's same thing like Christianity. They think they can get people and turn them Pentecostal. And it's only a few people will get it. And you have to be really bright to understand those things. But on the topic of just white male Asian females in general, among like say a 21-year-old white male and his like 18-year-old Asian girlfriend, it's kind of kiddie at first, and they're only doing it because they just, their sexuality is growing. They found out about the, maybe they're not experienced with other girls yet, and they find Asian girls to be very submissive and easy to get. And so I think white male Asian female really happens from what I witnessed. It's harmonious in Asian studies, but outside of that, it's a lot in the video game club or the board game club of these schools, right? It's this nerdy, autistic, Asperger thing that's happening, and I wasn't aware of that until I've actually seen it. And
I would like to point out I've never come across a Chad who is dating an Asian girl. So is it a matter of desperation, as the TRS guys say, or is it just, is it more the submissive side of things, or is it more of the desperation? If there was an equally attractive white girl, all things being held equal, would the guy go for the white girl instead, or is it just coming from a place of desperation, or is it an actual sort of exotic fetish?
My one friend, we were talking last night, Alex, he was telling me that he used to date Asian women, but he said, well, if you date Asian women, it's just an introduction to game, and rather you're having a woman with tricycles on, right? And once you stop dating Asian women, you date normal women, except they don't have tricycle seats on. And so I thought that was funny, but my argument was, hey, what if you don't want to leave the tricycles and you want to be, But that's, the thing is, there definitely is this, I think white men know. They know that Asian women are different, and they know they are easy to get. They don't have to deal with like this blonde-haired Paris Hilton, Amy Schumer thing that is so demanding. You don't have to play this arcane thing called game to get white women. You just have to be yourself. Greg Johnson, he said being yourself just means you're not accepting to any higher moral standards, right? You're just accepting the thing at your current situation. And Asian women, just like anything, like I'm making a radical comparison, is like Jesus Christ would be more open-minded if you know you sin or repent. Asian women are always forgiving. And I see that they always want to be with white men. Hardly with the whole, you'll never see a black male Asian female thing happening. I've only knew one case, but that black male wanted to be more Asian, and he was half Asian himself. And the thing is, Asian women are these nets or these ways for white men to love, and they don't have to try hard enough, or they don't have to. And I think that's a wonderful thing, really, with Asian Arianism. So
it's
the low-hanging fruit philosophy.
Yeah, it's a much more genuine love, because it's what's the word? Unconditional. Is that what you're suggesting, that the Asian Arianism means, because the guy doesn't have to, or at least feels like he doesn't have to try as hard, means that he, I don't know how to say this, he feels more accepted or something?
The biggest criticism I'm getting, and we were talking last night, saying that you sound like a beta, you sound like a cuck, or you sound like a weak, low-energy person that wants to live this strange lifestyle that's not like Hercules. I will agree that it's definitely an alt-like position, that it's more civic nationalism, and that it seems to be this weird obsession in game that you have to become this macho, strong Jack Donovan type, and overcome these things, even though Jack Donovan is gay. But it's like, I'm saying is like, it's okay to have an Asian girlfriend and do other things, especially in our red-pilled nation today, in the coming rise of the alt-right. It's okay for that. But what I'm saying is, you shouldn't be this like fat, autistic, like slump that like plays Final Fantasy and like these disgusting, like perverted materialistic things, or do drugs. I don't drink and I don't do drugs. I lift weights. I was on the cross country team. I eat healthy. I look good. Maybe I can. I would like to see an Asian Aryan thing, like Identity Europa, like handsome men, right? Handsome yaoi anime men doing this stuff, right? With their nice looking Asian girlfriends. Now, I was talking this with a friend, and he's like, all right, the girlfriend's got to be pretty too. And I said, hold on a second, depending. I mean, there are some guys who really like the fish or insect looking Asian women.
The pan-faced gook.
Yeah. There's often here, oh, they look like, Sam Hyde says, oh, they look like insects, or they look like bugs. And I'm like, some guys like that. I mean, compared to the more dark-skinned, blonde-haired Japanese, or the more white-looking Japanese, I mean, it's okay. And like in Asian, whatever East Asian or Southeast Asian, it's something of a very similar interest. And
desperation aside, I would like to also interestingly point it out as something we can actually glean from this, that the sort of Hollywood or Jewish lie that men don't care at all about female personality is kind of a little thrown off by this whole thing, because you have a situation where it does appear like men are dating exclusively, well, more likely for the personality. I mean, obviously you're saying, you know, some people like the pan-faced gooks, but I'm just saying it's interesting that you actually have a case where, and I think this is more indicative of the alt-right, where when men are from, oh, that's something I want to fuck, to, oh, that's something I want to have children with, they sort of turn away from that obsession with beauty, and that can lead to them going for gooks, apparently. I mean, if you say that, you know, there is an indication of alt-right, and I'm not saying that they're necessarily thinking about children, but it's a fundamental worldview difference that you get when you start embracing white nationalism or these sort of fashy ideas, enough so that you look for different things in women.
White men go to Asian women because they're good moms and they fulfill the mom resume. Unlike, sadly, white women, which are dating black males and being with a high divorce rate, they are going, it's better to have a virgin white female bride if that can happen. And it's most better to pick up best white male, white female advice I can give is find a Christian girl or some Midwest a white girl that likes Trump. That's the only thing I would say. But it's you're finding less and less of that happening, and it's more Asians fulfill the desires of being mothers. And so what's happening is the upper class white males that have their like master degrees or in STEM, science, technology, education, or engineering, math, they're falling for Asians because, and also in Asian, especially in Confucius society, they will go, the highest order deserves the highest person who deserves it. Not like aesthetic lies or some pagan like big tit or like big muscular Adonis man. It's more like your profession wise. And so you might have someone who gets a huge 6-7K yearly income from doing engineering, and it turns out his wife's going to be Korean or Chinese, and she's okay looking, but they are making children.
Sort of like the Zuckerberg sort of thing. So,
well,
all right,
well,
from
part
my
of
perspective.
No, go ahead, Nelson.
Yeah, right. So from my perspective, why should I not perceive this? I mean, in just the same way that I see because, you know, white people aren't polygamists, right? Europeans aren't polygamists. Why should I not perceive this in exactly the same sort of, as a threat to white birth rates?
Well,
yeah.
It is a threat to white birth rates, and I'm actually saying this as a warning. And I look at Asian Aryanism as a plan B, that in case if this white genocidal thing goes on and whites cannot uphold their identity, either the whole Asianification and Chinese wax museum theory will happen, or whites will have their white identity with half Asian, I guess I'll say it, Elliot Rodger traits, where you're going to have to get more people in touch with their white side on the white nationalist side. I think that's why the alt-right is doing really good, is because people are realizing their white side is really significantly important. And anybody, especially some of the Malaysian Asians, would die to be white, is because being white means you are part of Western civilization and that tradition of innovation and creativity. Anybody would want that. But we live in a society that's being condemned if you associate being white. So by attracting half white, half Asian kids and that generation, they're going to be in touch with that white side, and they will refine something what is good in Western civilization. However, you can't have bastard children, so there has to be a perseverance of the white race. Same with Asians, because if mom and dad goes out, then they're just bastard children, and they'll have to
Single mom problem.
exactly. They will have to uphold some society. Maybe that might be through Asianarianism. I don't know.
Well, everything about it sounds like a plan B. Like you said, the part of what drew me to the alt-right is the whole self-improvement narrative and the overcoming and becoming a better person so you could aid your nation. And what it sounds like you're saying is, oh, you don't have to do that. Oh, you could settle. And it seems like a complete contradiction. Yeah.
It's a very blue pill mixed with a white pill.
It's the purple white pill, whatever.
Sam Hyde called it the yellow pill in a personal email.
Yellow pill.
And he said, "Oh, we're in a crazy time, man. You're yellow pilling everyone." Like, it is definitely, we're in tense times, and the alt-right is rising, and I feel it's great that Donald Trump has become president, and some other world leaders too are leaning on the far right, and I'm a part of that generation, and so I hope that happens and we can persevere things. However, most people are normies, and either we're going to have to red pill them all, or they're going to live normie lifestyles. If they do live normie lifestyles, you got to point out their mistakes, and if they make the mistake, you might guys say, of racial mixing and having Elliot Rodger offsprings, you got to tell them that they should be Asianarians right away, and they should adopt alt-right things. I think people who are on the alt-right are people who are normies, and then last second, after the clock strike 12, they realize their mistakes and their guilts, and now they're repenting and they're becoming, how can I do things at a time where it doesn't seem so pure? I mean, you live one life, and this is the life we're living right now. And so, not to sound nihilistic or take a black pill, it's more like that it's, I'm saying that it's okay that you have an interest in Asian girls or in Asian culture is because it seems to be an overwhelming, huge influence, and there seems to be also a Western tradition, even with author Schopenhauer, with love for the Asian Oriental culture. The problem is we just really don't understand it. The Western side really doesn't understand it, and I think there needs to be more of a harmonious connection to it. And from what I see on Twitter and on Tumblr, tons of white guys and girls wish they were either Japanese or living anime characters, and they're bastardizing it. I have to say that's also Asianarian too. It's beyond the whole Japanese weeb thing, and it's more a serious thing, and that's what I'm really trying to say.
So you would say that the weebs or whatever is more of a caricature of Japanese identity or something like that. It's failed an attempt to sort of imitate it or something like that.
They're just
by people who are grasping for any identity they can get.
They're just weak white people who know they like Japanese culture and they want to be Japanese people, but they want their white people thing too. It's like that. I could put these white otaku types that go to these gaming conventions. They'll do Japanese things they watched in some 90s or 2000s anime and pretend that character. But then they'll do like stuff white people like and do their white people thing, which is okay. The thing is they got to make a choice. Either they're white and they're pretending to do this, you call them out as a weeb, or they're serious about this endeavor and wish to assimilate with that Asian culture side. And then I think they got to have responsibilities. They can't be eating Twinkies, playing Super Smash Bros. They got to get up and they got to do something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, what do you... Say... there's a number of far-right expats living in Asian countries, and even on the alt-right, there's a couple people like On the Offensive. Is it? There's I know of a couple people that, but to me, that a nationalist that's not living in their own country seems like giving up. In my opinion, they just go and leave and they commentate from the sidelines. But I've noticed it enough that it's not that uncommon. What do you think of that?
It's like it's like Ezra Pound and Colin Liddell, right? Ezra Pound, he was an American expatriate. He said everything. He could have sided with America, but sided with Italian fascism. And then we have Colin Liddell saying he's all for white birth rates and white nationalism, yet he's still this eccentric that still lives in Japan, probably speaks good Japanese, and like he runs alternative right blogspot. I tried to issue the question about what are we supposed to do with these, white Asian females on the whole alt-right Reddit. He said, Well, it turns out guys who really like Asian girls, they're into pedophilia, and you basically like Asian men, and they probably read a lot of Yukio Mishima. And I don't mean to misword him but the ideal is he has this very strange philosophy on that. But I like to tell Colin, you live in Japan and you witness these people all the time. Don't you have any sense of love or interest in that? I mean, on your YouTube channel, it's all this cool Japanese culture stuff. I mean, even through a personal email, he once said, Akira, like the anime film, is my life. So you got to make up that, what side are you on? And I know what you're saying too. It's just like, I feel like Colin has the total potential to be an Asian Aryan. I hope I can address on that if he gets on the Stark Truth with Robert Stark. I'd like to have a talk with him on that.
Well, now that you've sort of defined it, I'm not. I mean, let's just say we know HAPAs exist, and the idea of, I want to say actually honestly subverting it, but it's probably an accurate way of describing it. But using those, I mean, if we think of things in terms of genetic altruism, right? Sort of. I'm taking a vein from sort of Richard Dawkins' selfish gene here, but if they have 50% European DNA, you would suggest that they are inclined to be more altruistic towards their fellow white people, right?
Yeah, just like J. Philip Rushton said.
Yeah, but they lack a lot of the self-hating baggage that, I mean, if we're talking about HAPAs, right, they lack the self-hating baggage that pure white people might have. So rather than them being viciously anti-white as they are on that HAPA Reddit, you can sort of like interfere with that cultural Marxism and sort of steal them back. I guess I can't really. I mean, I argue against the idea of race mixing, but I don't argue against the idea of using these people who are already the product of white male, Asian female, whatever pairing.
I mean,
and using them for our sort of or getting them to side with white nationalism. I think that can only be a good thing.
Yes. I mean, I like Freud, and Freud's really interesting. He also said that our sexuality develops because we like our mother. I mean, that's somewhat true because we know about being nurturing and learning masculine and feminine from our father and our mother. And so if you're a HAPA kid and it turns out your mom is Asian, you'll be looking for an Asian girl. That's just natural. And if you're a HAPA and your mother's white, you'll probably be more on the white side. It's this strange thing where people gravitate to people like themselves. And, science and data shows that, and it's something I can relate to on that. It's just that with this whole thing, with the whole, white mother, white father, yet you're going with an Asian woman, is interesting because your mother's not Asian, but it seems that there is a broken relationship with white people today, because otherwise, if white people were loyal to themselves, this whole racial mixing wouldn't be happening. They're allowing these things to happen because something in white civilization has made people more liberal, more autonomized individuals. Something in the Western tradition made white people more open-minded or universal, which acts against them. Jared Taylor said this in one of his.
I think we know.
Yeah, but the common thread.
yeah, but anyway, yeah. So you would say that it is genuinely a product of white universalism and individualism and this sort of whole cultural Marxist thing that's causing this to come about. But
also, you want to steer in a better direction. Is that what?
It's also the exploration too of when the Dutch were like the first people to discover Japan, which is funny. And some of Dutch culture is in Japan, like the bakery and some of that food. But yeah, once people find out and there's another people over on the other side, then we understand that there's a bigger world. And yet, in that human evolution, people have made mistakes and they became more self-actualized. I think Greg Johnson, when he talks about ethnostates, is really a huge self-actualization of becoming and understanding the pinnacle of like Western philosophy. Yet at the same time, you want to make sure, in this globalist market where different races are scattering on the street, and hopefully it will not become the sad reality of Blade Runner, but it's as if people have to understand their virtues and their responsibilities and duties and, what do they really want from this, And I still, once again, I want to say I still understand anyone who has an interest in Asian culture, is because right now in our cultural climate, it just shows you the two big civilizations are the Western and the Asian civilization, and also there's Jewish, but I'm talking in more of cultural. These
Yeah,
two
right.
civilizations seem to be very important. Northeast Asian, Southeast Asians, and white European Americans. They seem to be the only groups of not two different distinct people that can really shake hands and that they're doing something. And as the Chinese, whatever, they make more ships and technology and they're going up to space, whites will keep making art. And it seems to be this weird synergy that's happening. And definitely from that outcome and through this weird Alexander kind of conquering, there will be this Asian Aryan race of people of this whole generation from the Silicon Valley of just Hapa kids. And right now, at the moment, they think the liberal society thinks they should be the one universal cafe au lait, multicultural, I am one with everything. But that's not happening. These Hapa kids are having alliance to their Asian side. And if they have alliance to the white side, I would call that Asian Aryanism right away. But they're having alliance to the Asian side, and they only use the multicultural thing because that's what whites are saying, right? If you want to associate with your white side, you're a big liberal that's universal and say these things. I think that has to go right away, And it's this strange thing that's happening.
Well, that happens because the frame is white versus everything non-white, and Asians used to vote Republican back when you're talking the Reagan era model minority. They assimilated almost like the European waves of people that came earlier, but due to this new cultural Marxist narrative, they're not viewing themselves as American anymore. They're viewing themselves as Asian American or just Asian, and they side with the non-white group. And it's not surprising to me at all that most Hapas would, if they go to college and they're exposed to all this the Marxist narrative, that they would see themselves as fighting white supremacy if they're thinking in racial terms at all.
And that's why Aryanism is just a better term than Americanism. Asian Aryanism. It makes sense, and they'll just go to the white side, and then they'll conflict with that. And I think that's where it's going. So hopefully that'll happen.
That sounds good. I was going to say something interesting as well to point out is how, or at least I'm not sure if you've had these sort of conversation with Happers, but how inclined are they to be open to the JQ?
It's pretty closed-minded. Nobody likes to talk about Jews, is because one, Jews really don't have a control over Asians, right? They have control over like Western white people, and they've had over it since Constantine and the whole Christian invasion of that pagan Germanic evolution. And there's a history, but on the East, they were just isolated. And so I think Jews have been trying to control the Asian countries, but have failed miserably. And so they all become Americanized, and you might see this whole Asian Jew Hapa thing happening, probably in the new, and you might see
Zuckerbergs.
Exactly. And there's this meme online, this fad. It says, "Look, this is our future," and on top of the pyramid, it says "autistic Jew Asian elite." How much of that is going to be true if everything the current trends keep going? But that proves that it's white male Asian female, or even say Jewish male Asian female for that matter, Ashkenazi. But most Hapas or Asians really don't have. They think Jews are something that killed like Jesus, and they are. I think they're aware. I think some Chinese know that Jews are very clever people and they should take pride in Israel, but they don't understand the subversive nature, like Kevin MacDonald wrote in his book, or any of the classical JQ things. And so I think it's just going to be like, I think there's this whole leave me alone mentality where it's like, Jews can do whatever, but if you tread on me and go away or something, it's a very natural thing. So as of right now, I don't think it's Jewishly controlled, but
as we see more sort of counter-Semitism rising due to the old right and this whole anti-globalist thing and all that, can you see them starting to trying to find safe harbor in the Asian countries and interbreeding and therefore blending in the same way that they could with the Europeans?
Revelo P. Oliver had a book called The Yellow Peril, and in that book, he basically described that Jews are going to be so cunning that they're going to figure out how to assimilate within Asian culture. There was a group of Chinese called the Kenfeg Jews. They're still there. It was this ideal to subvert the Chinese into Judaism as a religion so more Jews could get in. It didn't work out well because of Mao's government basically purged out those Jews, and the Jews basically went back to Israel or something of that. But now you have these group of Chinese who supposedly say by blood are Jewish, but rather it's just some cargo cult religion, kind of like some of the black Jews tend to believe in the Middle Africa place.
Yeah, I see. That's interesting. So, are these Jews? Are they actually look Asian?
Not. I'm trying to think of
I'm just
what.
Thinking because of the matrilineal thing.
I'm thinking of. I watched I'm trying to remember. I saw the one documentary with Norman G. Finkelstein, American Radical, and he was invited over to Japan to speak about how Jews are exploiting the Holocaust narrative and that they really have a grip on things. There was this one Japanese, quote unquote, Japanese academic there, and supposedly he was half Japanese, half Jewish, and it didn't. I mean, I know there's a lot of smack about race mixed people. Like, that was just an ugly person. Like, to imagine a hook-nosed Japanese
slanty-eyed and hook-nosed
trying to be Japanese when I know you're not, and you're acting on the Jewish side. I just think it's a little offensive because it's like you're speaking for Jews but pretending you're Japanese and trying to tell naive Japanese that somehow Jews
fellow Japanese people.
I know. This was just one case, and I'm trying to remember. It was in the Finkelstein documentary, and I got to look up his name again.
His name would be, because I want to see this guy.
It's an American Radical, and he's in Japan, and I was like, and this guy is debating Finkelstein, and says, it's just like, how could you say that Jews are every benefit to Japan? We know there's something super sinister about that. Like, I would call him out on that. I'm like, you're not Japanese. Like, I can speak, I don't know. I guess my anti-Semitic part is coming out. But what I'm saying is, you got to watch out for that behavior when you know it's clearly subversive and they're trying to say something. It's like the same. There's a lot of. It's funny because I've talked about this before, but I think yellow feminism is really huge. Do you guys know about yellow feminism?
I know some uppity Asian college girls.
It's funny because yellow feminism basically states that, feminism states you should universally go against patriarchy. And this is from the Western tradition, so it really only applies to white people. However, if you put feminism in the context of Asian interest, it's not patriarchy in the universal or white people terms. It's Asian patriarchy. It's Confucius Shinto patriarchy. And so Asian girls that get indoctrinated with this feminism go against that patriarchy in favor of Western white culture and then go ahead and get a white boyfriend. And it completely subverts the original meaning of the white girl feminism. And so this term yellow feminism is used for Asian girls interested in feminism, work against it by just being Western. And so I think Asian Aryanism as a sinister thing should advocate this quote unquote yellow feminism simply to distract these Asian girls who find feminism attractive, realize their potential and say, you're on the Aryan side, the Asian Aryan side, and you just want a white boyfriend. Like I had a girlfriend who was that uppity Asian blue hair feminist type, but really she just wanted to be understood by her other white friends and wanted white American culture and was pretty good passed as a normie. She was just into feminism because she just wants white attention, right? She just wants a white boyfriend. And so that's funny.
That sounds like kind of like the preacher's daughter syndrome where a white girl will go and get some thug black guy boyfriend to piss off her dad, but more in a rebellion against the culture they were raised in. If it's from understanding these types of people.
It's funny because you see feminism work on white girls, they become shrews, right? They have friends, they adopt cats, they read Feminism Today. They're just undateable, or they're just pretty girls taunting white men because they wish they were wives, right? They don't know any better. But like when Asian girls do feminism, to me it's a green light. It just means I want a white boyfriend and I'm looking to get into white culture. And so I only knew one Asian girl who called herself a lesbian and was a feminist. I mean, that's pretty common to say, but really they're just misunderstood. They just want someone to love them, and you could basically crack anyone. Now I'm not saying go game them, because I really think game doesn't work on Asian women. You just have to be yourself with Asian women and just persuade them, right? But
I have to disagree with that one. I've seen it time and time again where especially with even though lots of skinny white guys will date Asian girls still, if you're talking in terms of game, they'll still go for the higher SMV guy if possible.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of gold digging, especially in the Chinese. I mean to say game as in white culture and white interest, right? I know what you're saying too. Like if an Asian girl wants white culture, she's going to understand game too and be aware and apply those game tactics, right? Asian girl turns into a white girl, which is no different than like a bratty normal, and therefore game does work on her. There is a criticism with the whole white male, Asian female thing, which you brought up, which is basically these Chinese girls come into America, they want a white boyfriend because it's social status. And what they do is they're looking for the best white boyfriend to tell all their other Chinese girlfriends that they have a form of power. And they'll gold dig with that boyfriend for as long as she can. When she turns 30, she will stop that and realize that she can't gold dig or have white boyfriends anymore, and realize she'll go back to her Asian male or Asian guy in China who has like a huge $60,000, $70,000, even more dollar a year job, and she'll just go and gold dig back to her Asian male. But she does it in her youth just because she's mixing the whole Confucius gold digging nature with white men, and it's only a fad until she starts realizing it's back on the Chinese side. And so you can game her and play Western culture as a way to indoctrinate her being white,
Does that cause Chinese men to hate European men? Because I would despise another race that did that to.
I think so. I've known, especially from the geeky types who are, they don't have it all, and they see, it's definitely as offensive, and I can totally understand too.
I can understand that.
Anyone can understand that, and that Millennial Woes said this to Jared Taylor, that it's upsetting that you go into this white Midwest, maybe out in Kansas, a mid-white all high school, right? And there's tons of black males in there. And if you have white culture, that girl from down the block, and she's dating like a Hispanic like teenager or black male who doesn't know any better but only looks like a pit bull or a bulldog, that's upsetting because she's making a mistake, right? We're told in society right now that in this free society that it's rather women display and men choose, right? We as men, we got to be these things that show responsibility and duty and then choose our women. And then women will say, confirm it. However, it's not like that at all. It's the opposite. It's women choose, men display. And we're told the vice versa, that we should be doing these things, but rather it's women making these stupid mistakes. And then, they'll become either shrewds or realize they've lost their power. Roger F. Devlin said this, like, in youth, men are the nerds, right? And they're geeks. They're in their early 20s. They don't have experience. Women are at the power when they're virgins and they got a pair of tits and they're going around seducing guys. When women get in their 30s or later, they realize they're shrinking in power and their eggs are going away, so they got to settle down. Men, however, in their 30s grow even more powerful in their 20s because they get established and they have more of a cultural power over people, and they grow more male physiques, like more of an Adam apple muscle, And so it's this revenge of the nerd scenario, as Devlin calls it, that really works well. But in the youth term, it should be what's happening is, it should be happening at a young age. And I would like, people to stick to their own race. And sometimes there is bad, I can totally understand too, of like, I know this one Asian girl and she's dating this one white guy. And I'm like, this guy's such a jerk. Why would you be with him? It's not that the guy's a jerk and he's done anything. It's just that she doesn't know any better. That guy is displaying, and just in those circumstances, everything is happening all at that moment.
Right. Okay. So would you say? Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you the question I asked before we were recording, but I'll preface it here. So, in Australia, we have a situation where we have massive non-white immigration in the form of Asians, and unlike the immigration that you see in Europe, which is raping, murdering Muslims, or it's not really immigration in America, but the blacks in America are very
well-established criminal underclass of ethnics.
So it's very easy for people to bring up crime statistics or whatever. That doesn't exist in Australia. You can't bring up crime statistics. It's at absolute worst. All you can complain about is China interfering with our political process via donations or what have you to political parties. So as it stands, in terms of from an alt-right perspective, from a conservative perspective, Asians are incredible because they're productive citizens with low crime. But from an alt-right perspective, in that we care about the sovereignty of white people and Europeans, and I say Australians are mostly British in origin, the Asians just are a very big threat to us, specifically because they don't just demonstrate these violent tendencies. They are very inclined to mix in well, and as a result, there's a very realistic threat of us turning into Hong Kong 2.0 or something like that.
Yeah.
How would you respond, either from your worldview or whatever, to that sort of observation?
Yeah, it's kind of annoying because the Chinese will abuse a transaction. It's like this. It's Western civilization is based upon the whole trust value thing, right? White people can trust one another people, right? We know that if we see a white male, white female couple, you can look at them as your brother and sister. Any race can say that of their same said race, and the West has made this whole tradition based upon trust, where the court of law and philosophy and like natural sciences and like games are based upon this feeling of trusting one another. Kurt Doodle calls it like proprietarianism. He has a whole ideology about it. But in the case of the Chinese don't believe in trust. The Chinese has a culture based upon shame and this whole everyone owns everything else because it's for the greater good of the Chinese. If China can get a transaction, they will win, and the white side would lose out. So I'll use another Greg Johnson thing. Greg Johnson said that if you're in a subway and somebody beats you over the head and steals your wallet, he steals your money. Then there's a second example where a guy has a hat with and he's begging for money. It says, "Oh, please, I need money. I got to get this from my family," and you give him money. The first guy, he doesn't undermine trust to society. He just beats you, takes your wallet, goes away. The second example, however, he fools your trust, breaks it, you give him his money, and then you lose because he exploits that bond, what makes Western civilization. That is what the Chinese are doing. The Chinese are basically, if you ever walk in a mall, I walk, sometimes there's a mall nearby me, and there's a lot of Chinese restaurants. The Chinese will yell at white people going, "Food, food, fish, fish, you want it, cheap, cheap," and you do it, you give them their money, that's it. But they're ruthless. Chinese businessmen will keep attacking you until you make a transaction, and they don't care how you feel, what you think about, they'll just take it. So if there's like a pathologically altruistic liberal going around and thinking that the Chinese need money for their like children because they're dying of cancer, they don't care. They're just going to take your money and spend it for whether else, so as long they can make something out of it. The same way that whole made in China motif, the whole made in China thing, right? They'll make anything in China. They'll make exploding eggs. They'll turn shit into tar.
If you want it, we got it. Right.
But the thing is, for Australia's case, the Chinese want to go to Australia because it's not the Chinese government, and they won't be oppressed by some hard system, right? If you can get free stuff, they will get it. If the Australians keep acting like it's going to benefit their nation through some multicultural thing, they're the loser. The Chinese are just going to set their new Chinatowns in Australia, respect the Australian clients, but do everything behind their houses, not tell anyone, and hopefully Asianify, or at least put everything on Wax Museum and just have bases there. There's definitely spies in the works. There's so many Chinese spies. It's funny.
We know that.
And
they're colonizing the Western world. Like Vancouver in Canada, I think over half of the property there is owned by Chinese nationals.
Oh yeah.
It's ridiculous, and it's more insidious, kind of like the Jews, because they're not outwardly violent. They assimilate to a degree, but they have an extremely high ethnocentric element to them, and it works. If everyone else is using the group strategy, then whites are going to lose because we're not ethnocentric.
The FBI had a video release recently, I think it was about a year ago, telling white men working for the FBI, if you're working for China, please don't fall for a hot Chinese girl, because she's gonna she's a spy and she's just using you to do things. And that's totally right. I think that's when the US government got one thing right, is because, the Chinese will throw their women at you too. Like if they're from like if you're in a successful position, a lot of like beautiful looking Chinese women if you're in a position of power, will come to you. It's just, not to criticize my whole Asian Aryan thing, but what I'm saying is it's going to happen in favor of the spy background. And a lot of foolish white men will think it has something more than that, when really, no, the Chinese are going to have the upper hand in it. If you're going to have an upper hand, make sure it's Asian Aryan, or that she's on the more whiter side, or that you both consent to something. Because there are like deadly broken English Chinese girls that will just like upper hand you. And they will have the last say, and not you. And you'll be shamed out of that, and you'll lose the trust. But yeah.
Now, regarding the HAPA thing, going back to that, there was something I wanted to point out, or rather my observation of it, essentially, that I've noticed, right, from, obviously there's a lot of that sort of thing among Australians and among people I know. What I've found is... typically, it appears to me as if when you've got, or at least what are the two circumstances I can think of is two white males, one white male dating a HAPA female, and one white female dating a HAPA male, right? Mm-hmm. So there's two sort of opposite things, and what I've found in both circumstances, it's the male acclimatizing to the political beliefs of the female in both circumstances. I'm not sure if this is indicative of the whole thing, but it's an interesting circumstances where you've got, in both situations, a sort of submissiveness on the male side.
Oh yeah, that's interesting, because yesterday I was in the comic book store. I was picking up a comic book by Adrian Tumine. It's called Scenes from an Impending Marriage. Tumine, he does New Yorker art. He's a HAPA himself, mother Japanese, father white. He's a liberal elite in New York City. And he recently did the front cover of January 2nd's New Yorker issue. And here it is there's a black male, Japanese female on the front cover doing love locks, out of all things, in New York City. One, love locks never happen, because one, that's a Japanese thing, it's not American, and the second, it's like black male, Japanese female. That never happens, and that's completely like a liberal white people thing to wish how darling it is. At the same time, however, the art's done by a HAPA male, and so I had to pick this book up, Scenes from an Impending Marriage. This is Tumine's life as a HAPA liberal elite male, having that control. I should make a documentary of this on my YouTube channel, but there's a very reoccurring theme about being this Yukio Mishima character, that you uphold this strong character, right? But you're always weak inside, right? You know that you have this feminine thing that you can never overcome, and it's kind of like a weakness. Like you wear pajamas, or it's like everyone knows Jack Donovan is gay, right? You know, you hear that and it's like, oh, but he's such a masculine dude, how can he be gay? And that's why Donovan probably really likes Mishima too, and I can relate to that too. I love Yukio Mishima. He's one of my favorite writers. And just most of these liberals, they'll be denial of Mishima. They say, oh, he's just an evil fascist who has it all wrong. No, it's real. There's a Mishima effect. And like, if you are strong but have this feminine genetic thing, you're gonna deal with that mostly in your life. And that's why like Elliot Rodgers did what he did. But I think you can overcome it, be strong, and be healthy about it. So for this Andrian guy, which hopefully I can get him on the Stark Truth, I sent him a P.O. Box letter and sent him an email to his secretary, hopefully maybe to talk about this Asian Aryan issue. And I don't know, I'm looking at it right now, and it's just this, I do see he does have control in the relationship. However, I do think the white woman on his wife does have some, fascination that he's more on the white side. Otherwise, he couldn't have not attracted her. But
right.
For white male Hapa female, I was once again talking this to Alex. Alex told me that it would be great if Asian Aryanism is exclusively for Hapa people, and I said, yeah, that probably is going to happen. If you're going to have more white Asians, they're just going to associate on their white side, but they know they have an Asian flair, kind of like the Pennsylvania Dutch, where they all conserve. And they know they're Dutch, and they come from that background. And they all do arranged marriages because they know they're Dutch. And so, in the future, in the science fiction future, I think Asian Aryanism will happen more often with Hapa people. So I think the best target audience for Asian Aryanism is Hapa to Hapa, making this homogeneous thing. But for right now, there's this entryism thing, which I'm arguing for, which is kind of funny and disturbs a lot of people, where it's white male, Asian female, Asian male, white female, simply because there's more of that. There's less of Hapas, but tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of white male, Asian females, and that's going to have a consequence. And if that consequence is going to happen, they're going to have to do a lot of waking up to reality, and there's got to associate with Asian Aryanism. So that's my answer to that.
And I can't particularly see Hapas getting along too well with blacks anyway.
Yeah, I have look, Billy Blanks, Jiro, and those are like the two only figures who are blacks who transcend themselves and realize that Asian culture is ultimate. And I just think that's funny, but it rarely happens, right? There's zero. It's like 0.5% black male, Asian female, or even Asian male, black female. The two biggest losers in the multicultural game, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was like, Hey Arnold, Gerald, and Phoebe, and they put that on Nickelodeon? Well, that's such a joke, right? It doesn't happen, and I've only knew one case, but he was Japanese, and his father was a Somalian soldier who raped a Japanese girl, and I feel bad for it on that side. But this guy has tons of integrity, and he knows what he's on. He has his own smarts and wits, and he knows what he's doing. But at the same time, don't expect an Afro-Asian Aryanism to happen. Look, when I talk about Asian Aryanism, I'm talking about the unique relationship between whites and Asians and what is happening in this postmodern alt-right generation that's happening today. And that's the truth, and it's there, and it's evidence. So,
well, I could definitely see a large Hapa population in the future, although not so much in the U.S. I mean, what is the Asian population of the U.S.? 4%? The U.S. government doesn't keep the best statistics. I mean, Arabs and Indians are included in the Asian category. When you say Asian, everyone assumes, Oriental or Oceania.
Northeast Asian.
Right? So, yeah, East Asian, the Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans, and then some of the Indochina area. That's what people think. They don't think Indian or Central Asian, Kazakhs. But the Asian population is still relatively small in America. I I see what you're saying with there's going to be something's got to happen. Something's got to break at some point when you're having so many HAPA kids and they're sort of lost for identity. But I don't see the critical mass that you need and the type of people that would look for like ethnocentrism. If that's your goal, I mean, good luck. It's pretty hard.
I call everyone who's in denial right now. They're new cucks, right? They're not just cucks, which not only deny their own racial background. They're new cucks because not only do they race mix and have children, they deny their own destiny of their children, right? I had a case with a white friend. He was like the president of the video game and board game club at my college. He's got a really hot Asian girlfriend on him. I'm good friends with her, and I was doing man talk and being like, hey, that's a really awesome girl. Do you like Asian stuff? And he's like, no, this has nothing to do with that. There's absolutely nothing. She's and he went on this weird spasmic liberal revolt. It's strange because it's like that is the new cuck behavior. You not only, I mean, he doesn't have children, but let's just say if he does, not only have you committed the crime of race mixing, but you committed a greater crime of denying your destiny. And so to reclaim that, I would say, dude, just become Asian Aryan, right? And so maybe that can happen. But at this time right now, there are tons of white male Asian females who they don't even know what they're doing. They're living in normie, postmodern, everything's universal, don't question, professional class, everything's going to be okay, liberal, everything's relative. It's a sad fate because they're not answering the bigger questions. A part of self-actualizing yourself is a healthy way of living. And I'll tell a quick...
That's where your ideology can actually hand them an identity.
Yes.
That
and
is actually beneficial to us pure Aryans.
The only people like that understand me are like people who go to these strange punk rock shows or art galleries or vegan restaurants, right? One of my favorite bands is Juju. We had Jamie Stewart on the Stark Truth, and recently in Philadelphia, nothing but like white male, Asian female, the Jim Goad, Margaret Cho types who are like, yeah, my girlfriend's Asian, but hell, I love punk rock and white nationalism, and like that's what it happens there. It only happens in these weird urbanite eccentric cities where it's like angry, kind of punk-like, but not exactly, because they're only punk because they've been denied to have normal behavior. Like I'm a healthy person. Like I don't drink, I don't do drugs, but these guys do it. And I just feel like it happens at these weird punk shows. Even like at an Atari Teenage Riot event I went to, a very far left band, but hey, Nick Endo is Japanese German. They're Asians flock where Asians are, right? And so they're there again, and it's just like I see this trend happening, and these are the only yellow-pilled Asian Aryan people who are like, yeah, I know it's all stupid and people don't want to, but we have our own destiny, and it's kind of forming right now. I have another story. I'm in this board game club that I meet at this one grocery store, and we play cards every like Monday or whatever, and they're all my like four best white friends. And one time I was invited to a board game event to play some board games at this guy's house. I'll give a fake name. His name is John. I went over to John's house that night, and it's first time going over his house. I said, hey John, what's up? And he's like, pit leader, I would like you to meet my my wife, Natsume. That's a fake name too, but he had a Japanese wife. I was like, wow, I didn't know you had a Japanese wife. You never told me. Wow, you speak Japanese too. And we got in this whole cultural thing. It was really nice. We were talking. Then the next guy came over, a fake name, Trevor. He had a Chinese wife or something. His wife was Chinese. I'm like, what? Now we have two Asian wives. So he has a Chinese wife. He has that. And then we were starting board games. There was two white male, Asian female couples in the room. And then a third guy came over. His wife was Korean. And then it was like 7 people in the room. Me, 3 white male, Asian female couples. And I was just shocked to learn that 3 of the people I knew at the board game club, one of them had a wife and 2 of them had 2 girlfriends, right? And the first guy, he's probably going to have kids with this person, this Japanese woman. And these 2 guys just are dating Asians. I'm like, okay. And when I was driving home that night, that eureka moment came to me. And I was like, there's something weird in this gamer culture, in this weird late 20, mid 30 gamer culture, where all these white guys who have their college degrees or even masters go and get Asian girls. What is up with that? And I think it should be addressed. And I think that might even be the beginnings of what I was thinking calling Asianarianism, where it felt too real, and it felt like the elephant was obvious in the room. These guys never told me they had Asian girlfriends, right? They never told me this. I'm like, okay, it's got to be addressed. You got to do something, because you might even have kids with these people, and what culture do you associate with? I just find that really interesting.
Well, I think it's what also is interesting to point out that this is, in a sense, the answer to, the sort of Chad question, in that the party girl who wanted to, what's the word, fuck her 20s away and then settle down, after doing a shit ton of drugs and stuff like that, settle down with the nice, what do you call it, well-earning, successful career guy, is at serious risk from this new phenomena, which is just an interesting thing to point out, that as the alt-right becomes more of a mainstream thing, and as as we, as white people, start looking for younger, virgins and all that, right? And as the, I don't know, these kind of guys that the happer relationships increase as well, as guys who don't want white women or can't get white women, or there aren't enough young white women to go around, you'll find that there's going to be a lot of washed up, ex-druggy white women who are in a very bad situation in terms of they will never find marriage.
These white males,
interesting to point out.
These white males that I know there's a certain, I gotta write about this or do a video on it. They have a certain lifestyle or cultural knowing. Like that white male, if you see a white guy with an Asian girlfriend who's a part of this culture, there's definitely a style, right? It's this weird style that's not being like, it's a white guy who likes Asian girl style. I've been trying to write it down. Two of my friends have like half-shaved beards, brown hair, and goatee. I'm like, I wonder if the goatee is an Asian Aryan, or no, a white male that likes Asian girl thing. Maybe it's the professional attire or wearing glasses, or maybe it's the skinny beta body or no tattoos. And I'm trying to actually pinpoint that. What makes that white, you could just look in the audience and be like, okay, that guy's got an Asian wife. I'm trying to understand that. Like, who is that type? So, right now you're hearing the fedora wearing, glass wearing, gay beta cuck guy, and that's being a joke right now. I'm trying to make a joke where it's like, this is the guy that has the white guy that has an Asian wife. Like, what is that?
That's a stereotype. You actually analyze that stereotype.
Like, I'm saying he probably likes video games or board games. That's my first check. Beard and brown hair, okay. I don't know.
Brown hair is interesting.
I gotta go from there, but
yeah. All right. Well, I think we've actually had a pretty interesting conversation here, but we have been talking for a good hour and a half or something now.
Is there anything you want to add in conclusion?
Yes. Yeah. Right now, I'm going to get the domain name www.asianarianism.com. You might see the website next or in the coming 2 weeks. I have a YouTube channel. Search Pill Eater. If you want a good introduction, look up Big Man Tyrone endorses Pill Eater. Big Man Tyrone, that has over 6,000 views and is up and coming.
How much did you pay him, by the way? I want to know how much he charges for his videos.
They're pretty pricey, but I got a good discount price, and he gave me a good price from the $100 range. So, and it's good exposure too. If you want something silly and out there, because no one's going to take the whole white male, Asian female, ethno-state thing seriously, so you got to be jokey about it. And Big Man Tyrone does the job. And
that's the perfect troll. That's why you got a black guy talking about white nationalists dating Asians.
And 6,000 views in a single week, and hopefully growing. Hopefully I want to get 12,000. But I'm also on Twitter too, and I co-host The Stark Truth with Robert Stark. That's at www.starktruthradio.com. I do 3 shows or even 5 shows a week with Robert Stark, and we get them on there. We're going to have big guests. We're going to have Jason Giorgiani on soon. We're going to have Ryan Andrews, who did The Birth of Prudence. His first appearance, he talks about white male, Asian female interest in his alt-right book. We're going to have really serious guests in the coming weeks. I have the recent Greg Johnson interview on my channel. And yeah, we still do alt-right things and really funny stuff. So just check out Stark Truth's channel too. And I'll be doing more videos in the future.
All right, well, I'll put all your information in the description. Thanks for coming on Last Sons of the West.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.